If there's one star that rules our lives, it's the sun. Without it, we simply wouldn't be here. But imagine this. You're lying on a beach enjoying the sunshine, and suddenly, like a giant light bulb burning out, the sun just dies and stops sending us its gentle light. A human mission is immediately launched into space, but it will take exactly 1 year to fix the problem. So, what would happen to the Earth and to us during that time? Now, fair warning, this is actually pretty hard to answer precisely. Even experts who've looked into the question don't agree on the exact numbers, especially when it comes to how much the Earth's temperature would drop without the sun. But at least we can get a rough idea of the consequences. What kind of mark would a change like that leave on our world? And would we survive long enough to see it? You'll find out in 360 seconds. The very moment the sun stops shining, you wouldn't notice a thing. You'd have to wait a little over 8 minutes before seeing it disappear, because that's how long sunlight takes to travel through space between the sun and Earth. Then, exactly 8 minutes and 20 seconds later, the sun suddenly vanishes, plunging everything into darkness. Darkness now covers the side of Earth that had been lit up, and it's a moonless night too, since the moon only shines by reflecting sunlight. But we would still be able to see the stars, and electric lighting would still work. Of course, no one would know exactly what was happening at first. Once the initial shock wears off, because after more than 24 hours without sunlight, people are going to start worrying, we can expect some pretty intense reactions. People are going to start getting nervous. Some will see it as the end of the world. Others will see it as an opportunity to loot. Others will already be preparing for the worst because they've realized that within just a few hours, the temperature has already started to drop. Now, yes, a drop of 4 degrees Celsius doesn't seem that dramatic at first. That's roughly what happens every night, except this time, the night is going to last a little longer than just 10 or so hours. The days pass in darkness, and the temperature keeps falling. After 1 full week without sunlight, the thermometer has already dropped below 0 degrees Celsius. That's when serious trouble starts for people living in parts of the world that have never had to deal with temperatures like this, such as Latin America or Africa. Those regions simply have no infrastructure built for that kind of cold. It's very possible that millions of people in those areas would head for major cities looking for help, cities that would already be in chaos. Armies would likely be deployed to contain the violence, and governments would be forced to deal with situations unlike anything they had ever faced before. Nature wouldn't do much to reassure us either. As the air cools, moisture condenses and falls as rain or snow, but these would probably be the last rainfalls and snowfalls. Without the sun to evaporate water and replenish moisture in the atmosphere, the air would eventually become extremely dry. After those final storms, the clouds would disappear, though on a moonless night, you probably wouldn't notice much difference. Streams begin to freeze. That means less water feeding into rivers, and in turn, weaker flow in the major waterways. After 1 month without sunlight, coastlines that had resisted the cold up to that point, thanks to the ocean keeping them warmer, finally begin to freeze. Little by little, the sea itself starts turning to ice. Temperature-wise, after about a month and a half, the average would drop to around -8 degrees Celsius. And at that point, temperatures no longer change depending on the time of day, because night is now permanent. Those extreme conditions would already have killed most of the people who were neither used to nor prepared for that kind of cold. It's reasonable to assume that Scandinavia and countries like Canada and Russia would handle the drop in temperature better. In France, for example, things wouldn't be great, though the country has experienced similar conditions before. During the winter of 1963 to 64, temperatures regularly dropped below -20 degrees Celsius. So yes, it would be cold, very cold, but still nothing we couldn't handle, at least for now. After 6 months without sunlight, things become truly serious. The average temperature on Earth would be hovering around -50 degrees Celsius. The surface of the oceans would be frozen several meters deep. You could easily walk from Spain to England, or even cross parts of the North Atlantic as the ice spreads outward from the poles. For humans, things would be grim. The lack of sunlight over such a long period would have real effects on health. It would throw off our biological clock and seriously damage morale. That's because serotonin, which is partly stimulated by daylight, would no longer be produced the same way. We would likely see a major rise in depression, and the bleak outlook for the future certainly wouldn't help. Food supplies that aren't protected from the cold would start to freeze. While that would preserve some foods, like meat, others would be ruined by the cold. Agriculture, as we know it, would be completely wiped out. Without sunlight, there is no photosynthesis. Nothing grows. And with the ground frozen solid, there's really no hope there anyway. Electricity would also become harder and harder to generate, and anything powered by solar energy would obviously be useless. Wind turbines would stop working too, because there would no longer be any wind. Without the sun's heat to create warm and cold air masses pushing against each other, the wind would eventually die out. We could still rely on nuclear power plants and coal plants for electricity, assuming they could withstand such extreme temperatures. Animals that weren't built for brutal cold would eventually die. Their bodies, preserved by the cold, could become a food source for humans, who would be finding it harder and harder to replace their supplies. A few days before the sun finally comes back, the world and its inhabitants would be in very bad shape. The average global temperature would have dropped to around -78°C. At that point, Earth would be starting to look a lot like Pluto, whose average temperature is around -228°C. And if the sun never came back, Earth would eventually become its twin. But there is one place on Earth where people would be a little less concerned about the cold taking over the world. That place is Oymyakon, a village in eastern Siberia, famous for being the coldest inhabited place on Earth, with an average yearly temperature of -15°C and a record low of -71°C. They're already well used to this kind of thing. It gets so cold there that boiling water thrown into the air freezes before it hits the ground. But back to our main point. If power plants eventually failed because of the cold, humans might have taken refuge in underground cities, which would be much easier to keep warm. More importantly, those places would have been protected from the most extreme temperature. Even so, the lack of food would almost certainly have wiped out a large part of humanity and the animal life on Earth. After that inhuman cold, after all the deprivation and hardships you endured during that year-long night, you finally step out of your underground city, and there it is, relief. The sun blinds you once again. Still, there's no need to panic. The sun is an enormous ball of energy, and its lifespan is estimated at least another 5 billion years.